What is incense? Incense, of course, is a distinctive feature of our worship, a distinctive feature of our offering of the Mass. And there are all sorts of myths about why we might use incense in church. One of those myths that you keep on hearing being repeated is that incense was used as a way of disguising malodorous worshippers. There are three biblical reasons why incense is a distinctive part of our worship, and I'll explain what those are. First of all, though, a word about what incense actually is. Incense is the resin or the gum of a very particular tree that lets off an aroma as it's burned. And in thurible, there's hot charcoal, and onto that hot charcoal we put that resin, that ground up gum. If I bring it close to the camera, you can see there what it looks like, just sort of crystals of this ground up resin, which we, when we place on, let off the sweet smelling smoke. So those three reasons then about why we use incense in worship. First of all, and bearing in mind what we said last week about the Old Testament roots of our Christian worship and the Jewish roots of Christian worship, incense was used in the temple in Jerusalem, and it was used as a sign of sacrifice. So when we use incense during Mass, we're reminding ourselves that we are engaged in a sacrifice. Not quite the same kind of sacrifice that the Jewish people were engaged in their worship in the temple in Jerusalem when they offered incense on the altar there, but a sacrifice of praise and thanksgiving, and entering into the sacrifice of Christ on the cross. The Mass is an engagement with and entering into that one supreme sacrifice of Christ. And that smoke, that sacrificial smoke of incense, reminds us of that. Secondly, incense is a sign of prayer. In the New Testament, in that strange and wonderful book of Revelation, the very last book in the Bible, we hear of incense as a sign of the prayers of the saints ascending up into heaven. So incense, a sign of our prayer, a sign of our offering of prayer and of worship to Almighty God. Incense, the sign of prayer. And then thirdly and finally, incense is a sign of honour. In the Roman world, the offering of incense to the emperor was the sign of the honour that was offered to him. But in Christian worship, it's the sign of our offering of honour to Almighty God. And we use it at distinctive moments in the liturgy to speak of the honour that pertains to them. So we use incense in the gospel reading as a sign of the honour that we place on the words of Jesus in the scriptures. And we use incense to honour our gifts that we place upon the altar, the gifts of bread and wine. We use incense as a way of honouring the whole assembly, the whole people of God who are engaged in worship, honouring the priest who offers the sacrifice of the Mass on our behalf, and honouring the people of God assembled to make that offering of worship together. So incense, that beautiful symbol of worship that we use in Mass, a sign of sacrifice, a sign of our prayer, and our sign of honour, offered to Almighty God and offered to one another.